Hey ladies, happy Monday. So happy to be here. All right guys, so hopefully some of you guys will hop on live with me. And I would love to share with you guys some information about perimenopause and how it affects our bodies, how it affects our weight loss results. So something I've been studying quite a bit about lately. Just real quick guys, my name's Courtney. I'm the admin of this group. We have several new members, so just wanted to make sure that you guys all know who I am. So I'm the admin and I'm a certified personal trainer and health coach. And I've been kind of missing in action for the last week, but I am back and I cannot wait to share some more valuable information about the metabolism with you ladies. So I've been in the field for a little over 10 years now, and I'm actually doing a special certification right now about the female metabolism. So I've been learning lots of things, all the things metabolism, lots of things about the menstrual cycle, and also a lot of information about things like low thyroid, PCOS, and also perimenopause and menopause. So that being said, my brain's kind of been on all of these subjects lately, and with my 40th birthday just around the corner, I've definitely been thinking about all the things as we get older. But I wanted to come on here and talk with you guys a little bit about perimenopause and what to expect with it, how we can get through perimenopause and menopause with less symptoms, and the frustrating weight gain, right? We want to be able to keep that weight gain to a minimum. So I wanted to hop on here and share with you guys some ways that you can go through the process with less symptoms, less weight gain, and less headache. So I can't wait to share this with you all. So just so you guys know, I actually did not know this until I started doing this certification for the female metabolism, but there is a period of time that happens before menopause, and that is perimenopause. So menopause is actually defined as 1 year without a menstrual period. So most women go through perimenopause usually around age 35 to 50, and everyone's going to be a little bit different. And this process can take anywhere from 1 to 10 years. So that's why it's really important to know these things, ladies, so that way we can do the lifestyle and dietary changes that we need to do in order to experience less symptoms when it comes to perimenopause. So I literally just had a discussion with a potential client, and she is not the first person I've heard this from. And to be quite honest, I'm a little terrified. But I believe, yeah, she was in her early 50s, and she said, just breathing seems to put weight on my body. And this is someone who hasn't really, she's always been thin her whole life, and then boom, menopause happens, right? And here we are. So that's why I kind of wanted to go in this direction, because I noticed a few years ago that a lot of my clients are generally age 40 to 55, and they all have been dealing with this issue, and it's something that we're all going to deal with eventually, right? So here's the thing about perimenopause. You never know when you're going to hit into it, but you'll start to experience some of the following symptoms. So here's usually how it happens. So estrogen will first start to fall. And that's when you start to, actually, estrogen starts to rise. So that's the first thing that starts to happen. Your estrogen will start to rise, and then you'll start to notice more fat around like your hips and your thighs, okay? So usually around the lower body is where that extra fat will come from whenever there is any kind of estrogen dominance. So usually that's the first thing that will start to happen. Your hormones will start to kind of go up and down, especially your estrogen and your progesterone. You might have more irregular periods. So maybe you're experiencing more heavy periods, or maybe they're just not as regular. So that is another symptom that you're moving into the perimenopausal space. Weight loss resistance, okay? So that's probably one of the number one symptoms that I've heard. So doing the things that you used to do in your 20s and your 30s just doesn't have a big impact on your weight, if any, right? So that's definitely a symptom of perimenopause. Digestion might be different. So you might have some issues with digestion, bloating, constipation, things like that can signal that you might be moving into perimenopause. And then finally, mood changes due to levels of your estrogen and progesterone. Depression and anxiety might start popping up. In addition to those symptoms, you might have some kind of diagnosis that pops up, such as low thyroid, insulin resistance. So those things might start happening. So those are some signs that you're moving into perimenopause. So it usually begins with estrogen and progesterone. So those are sister hormones. So think of them kind of like as twins that are not identical. So I guess that would be fraternal twins, right? So generally what happens, your estrogen will start to rise in beginning of perimenopause. That can lead to things like increased cravings, increased fat, especially around the hips and the thighs. And then what happens is you start to become estrogen dominant, so that has all sorts of other issues. Because we want estrogen to be in a Goldilocks zone. We don't really want estrogen to be too high, but we also don't want the estrogen to be too low either, because that could actually cause problems as well. So pretty much with any other hormone, guys, we want estrogen to be balanced. So that's generally what happens in the beginning of perimenopause, is that estrogen will start to rise. After a while, it will start to fall, and then that's when we start to have things like belly fat, right? Increase in belly fat. So that's the issue with having estrogen too low, is that you'll start to kind of get that apple shape, all right? So during perimenopause, your estrogen is going to go up and down. Also, during perimenopause, you might become more resistant to insulin. So very common issue with women. Insulin resistance generally is caused from basically when your hormones are out of balance, but it could also be an issue with diet. So if we're eating a diet that is rich in excess carbohydrate, especially things like refined carbohydrates, that can lead to things like insulin resistance. And insulin resistance can be a huge issue when it comes to weight loss, because it can make weight loss really, really difficult. So that's something that you definitely want to keep an eye on, is insulin resistance, because that can make things really hard, can make it really hard to lose weight, and it can also lead to things like increased cravings, which can make it really easy to overeat. And that's why a lot of times when we are insulin resistance, a lot of times that can lead to things like weight loss resistance as well. So that's one thing that we want to keep in mind, is insulin resistance is very, very common, especially as we get older. If we have a passive eating a lot of carbohydrates in our diet, that's something that we definitely want to be aware of. All right, guys, so if you have any questions, I'm just going to keep going. We're here live talking about perimenopause and all the issues that might come from it, and what we can do in order to keep our symptoms under control, right? Because this is something we're all going to go through. Also, during perimenopause, ladies, estrogen and progesterone will start to impact serotonin, dopamine, and also GABA levels, okay? So these are all like basically all feel-good hormones, right? So whenever this is out of whack, then we might experience things like anxiety and depression start to show up. So not only are you going to be dealing with things like with your weight, but you might also see changes in your mood. So you might be more anxious than usual, right, during perimenopause. So that's another thing that can come up. So basically, guys, we need to be prepared for all these things. And the thing is that even though we're all going to go through this, whether we go through it naturally or whether we have a hysterectomy, there is certain things that we can do in order to age more gracefully, to have less symptoms, and also to keep weight gain and weight loss resistance to a minimum. So that's what I want to share with you guys today. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep going, guys. There is 6 things that I'm going to share with you today that you can start implementing into your lifestyle in order to keep perimenopausal symptoms under control. So the first one we're going to talk about, ladies, is avoid extremes, okay? So we talk a lot about this in our group. We talk about how, yes, it's definitely a calorie deficit that you want, but it's not always a good idea to live in a calorie deficit because that can lead to things like metabolic stress that we talk a lot about in our group. And whenever the metabolism is under stress, then the metabolism will start to react and it will stop to respond to things like a calorie deficit, right? So that's why sometimes we'll find ourselves in, I'm eating, a low calorie diet, all the time, but I'm not seeing the results anymore. And that's exactly why, because a calorie deficit can actually be a stress on the body. The body will view that as a stress and will stop responding. So doing those crash dieting things, techniques that we used to do in our 20s, ladies, is not going to work whenever we are perimenopausal age, okay? So with that, guys, what we want to do is implement things like carb and calorie cycling. So basically what you want to do is cycle in periods of a calorie deficit with periods of eating more isocaloric. So basically what that means, you can do it in several ways, but the most simple way to do this is to do 2 weeks eating in a calorie deficit, a modest calorie deficit. I would suggest like maybe 20% of what you need to maintain your weight. I would just take off 20% off of that. So cycling in periods of about a 20% calorie deficit with 2 weeks of eating isocaloric. So basically with that, you're going to be eating roughly what you expend. So even though that is a longer term process when it comes to weight loss, it's definitely going to be a lot more sustainable, right? And that's what we want. So that's exactly what I tell my ladies that are going through perimenopause to do, and actually even younger ladies, because guys, metabolism is very smart, is very adaptable. In fact, it was designed to adapt. So it's always good to have some kind of diet variety. So if you're dealing with perimenopause, then I would highly suggest that you avoid extremes in order to keep your metabolism healthy and running efficiently. All right, guys. So that kind of goes with number 2, intermittent diets. So basically what that means, don't live in a calorie deficit, ladies. Watch that calorie gap. So not to say though, if you're not exercising very much, then you're probably going to be okay on a low calorie diet. And vice versa. If you're an athlete, you definitely want to make sure that you're fueling enough. But with intermittent dieting, basically what that means is it's not a good idea to do like 16 weeks of, like a fat loss type program where you're eating 1,000 calories a day. That's just not a good idea. So either doing 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off with low calorie and going isocaloric, or you can do you can kind of go off of your workout schedule. You can do higher calorie days on the days that you work out, and then on the days that you rest, maybe you eat a low calorie diet. All right, number 3, ladies, is movement versus exercise. So what this means is a lot of people put their structured workout as number 1 above things like walking all day. So here's the issue with that, guys. So I know a lot of people who work out like crazy, they get their 45 minutes, an hour in, but the problem is they're sitting the rest of the day. I can tell you right now, you're going to be a lot better off to skip your workout and work on getting enough steps in every day. So here's how the breakdown, ladies. Here's a little information about you. And every time I hear this, I'm like, no way. But there's all this science that backs this up. So your RMR, or your basal metabolic rate, so basically that's the calories that your body needs to perform functions like digesting food, breathing, all of those things. That takes up 60% of your daily calorie expenditure, okay? Your NEAT is about 30%, okay? So NEAT is non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is basically a fancy word for non-structured exercise. So basically activities of daily living. So walking to the mailbox, cooking dinner, right? Those types of things. Playing with your kids. Those are all going to be non-structured exercise. That takes up 30% of your calorie expenditure, leaving about 10% of calorie expenditure from your structured workout. So that's why it's so important, ladies, that you're getting enough movement during the day, right? That you're getting enough steps in, you're getting up every hour, and just even if you just pace, right? Or just stand up versus sitting. Guys, I cannot stress enough how important movement is. So that being said, guys, don't just prioritize your workout. Make sure that you are making movement a big part of your daily life, okay? So important for weight loss, especially when we hit perimenopause age. Number 4, all right, guys, traditional weight training workouts versus HIIT workouts, okay? And I will argue, actually, everyone at any age should be doing this, guys. Do not do HIIT workouts day after day after day. You will burn your body out, especially, guys, if you're experiencing things like feeling wired but tired, right? So maybe your mind is just racing, right? So if you're experiencing that wired and tired feel, then your mind's racing, but your body is exhausted. That is more than likely a sign that is probably a good idea to just kind of simmer down now, okay? So especially, guys, when you start to get in your 40s and your 50s, it's a great idea to move into a more traditional style resistance training program versus like HIIT. So what I mean by traditional resistance training, so I'm not saying like pick up the wimpy weights. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is you want to do things like more traditional type lifts and rest in between your sets and also your exercises, so your body can fully recover, and that way you can give it your all when you go again. I really like what my mentor, Dr. Jay Tita, says. What does he say? He says, work until you can't, rest until you can. And I really, really like that analogy, even just for like everyday life. But I thought that was really good. I was like, yeah, work until you can't, rest until you can. So this is going to be more like, more of like, okay, you're going to be doing a bench press. You're going to go pretty heavy, right? Heavy enough to where you can do about 10, I would say 8 to 12 reps is really the sweet spot for building some lean muscle mass. Resting for a good minute or two, okay? That way you can get through your set again, all right? So putting those rest periods in is going to make it to where it's less stressful on the body. Not to say that it's not a good idea to sprinkle in HIIT. So kind of what I've been doing a more of a traditional type resistance training workout, a good 2 to 3 days a week. And then maybe once or twice a week, I'll do something a little more higher intensity, So I'll do less rest, more intense things, full body compound exercises, incorporating things that are really going to get my heart rate up, like some burpees, battle rope slams, things like that. But the point is, guys, is that your body, especially if you're coupling up all these HIIT workouts with a very low calorie diet, this can be stressful to the body. The body will register it as stressful, and guess what? Your metabolism will stop responding. So not to say that you have to stop HIIT, but I would definitely think more, instead of working harder, work out smarter, right? More traditional style workouts versus the high intensity day in, day out, okay? Number 5, carbs versus calories. So basically what this means, instead of going to a calorie counting approach, go more to a carb counting approach. I feel like it's a little bit less tedious, for one. 2, you can also take an intuitive type approach. That's something that I teach in my online coaching programs. But also, going back to what happens when we hit perimenopause, we generally get less insulin resistance. So basically what that means is that basically what we need to do is cut our carbs a little bit, and we need to make sure that we're eating the right kind of carbs. So I always tell ladies that are in their 40s and 50s and beyond, hey, don't focus so much on your calories, focus more on your carbs, okay? Focus more on getting more fibrous carbs, less starchy carbs into your diet, and make sure that you're not eating a lot of refined carbohydrates and things that are rich in excess sugar. That's really important because insulin resistance, ladies, makes it really difficult to lose weight. So in order to get insulin under control, we want to make sure that we are doing things like eating the right kind of carbs and making sure that our carb macros are in check, right? So going more like a low carb approach or even adding in some carb cycling would be a fantastic approach for someone who is in perimenopause. So basically, don't worry so much about the calories, focus more on the carbs, okay? If you guys have any questions about that, let me know in the comments. All right, guys, one more before we recap and call it a great day. Stress management, guys. I could not stress this enough. Stress management is key, guys, and I can tell you right now, so here's like one little change that I have made. So I've actually lost the last 5 pounds, and it's really just been exercising more smartly and putting more stress relieving activities. So I'm actually more lean than I was when I was like lifting super heavy, doing 2-hour lifts. And even when I was a boot camp instructor, like I'm literally like more lean, doing things like yoga, taking it easy, and making sure I'm doing stress relieving activities every day. Guys, it does make a difference. I promise you. And out of all 6 of these, what you guys want to do is focus on the stress management, okay? Because if you have your stress under control, you're going to have your hormones in better balance. Your metabolism is going to be more balanced, and you're going to have less issues with perimenopausal weight gain, okay? All right, guys, so hope this was helpful. We're going to go through those 6 real quick. So we're here live. We're talking about perimenopause. What happens to our body? Yes, more than likely, you're probably going to have some symptoms, and most of us do, right? So symptoms are going to include things like your periods become more irregular. You might have increased cravings. Maybe you're having more issues with weight loss, right? Weight loss isn't as easy as it used to be. You might have seen things like changes to your digestion, changes to your mood, and you might even have some inflammation, maybe even some diagnoses such as low thyroid, insulin resistance. Those types of things might start to show up. So today, guys, I share with you 6 things that you can do in order to make those symptoms less severe. Avoid extremes, guys. So stop with the crash dieting, okay? Stop with that, okay? No more, fasting for days upon days. That can be stressful to the body. The metabolism will see that as stress and will stop responding, okay? Intermittent diets is number 2. So basically what you want to do is make sure you're not living in a calorie deficit day in and day out. Your body needs variety so your body does not adapt, okay? If you go low carb, low calorie too much, your metabolism will start to slow down. So you will stop burning so many calories at rest and also during movement and exercise sessions. So really important to make sure that you're cycling in calorie deficits with periods of eating isocaloric, where you're eating roughly what you expend. Focusing on movement versus exercise is number 3. So making sure that you're getting plenty of steps every day, guys, is so important. So if you know you're seated most of the day, I would not even worry about exercise until you get that movement up. So 10,000 steps a day is a great goal. If you're not quite there, maybe you start lower and you can work yourself up. But staying moving is absolutely key. It takes up 30% of your calorie expenditure. Exercise takes up 10. So you tell me what's more important, right? All right, number 4, traditional weight training versus HIIT, especially as we get older. HIIT can be very stressful to the body if you are not fueling properly, if you are not giving yourself adequate rest. And as we get older, guess what? Our body needs more rest in between exercise sessions for most of us, right? So it makes sense to move to a more traditional style in resistance training, focusing on building lean mass, okay? HIIT's totally fine, but just make sure that you're sprinkling it in moderation. Okay, and then we talked about carbs versus calories. Yes, calories do matter, but I generally, I will tell women, since we become more insulin resistant with perimenopause, that to focus more on carbohydrates. So more fibrous carbs versus the starchy carbs. So eating your broccoli, your greens, your mushrooms versus like potatoes, especially trying to stay away from refined packaged carbohydrates, right? That can spike blood sugar and make us more resistant to insulin. So making some good dietary changes with that and focusing more on going low carb, adding in some carb cycling is also a great idea as well. And then finally, ladies, stress management, okay? So here's what I suggest. Start with 3 stress relieving activities each week. So this is going to look different for everyone. For me, I take a bubble bath every day. That's one thing that I do for myself. I love taking yoga. I do that about 3 days a week. And I love walking out in greenery. So basically, guys, get off the treadmill and get into nature. Get those walks in, do things like journaling, meditation, really anything that makes you feel good and helps you manage your stress. This is probably the most important out of the 6, guys. So make sure that you are incorporating some kind of stress relieving activities into your life each week, okay? All right, guys, hope this was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions. So if you're watching the replay, pop your questions about perimenopause in the chat below. All right, guys, cheering you on. Hope you have a great, healthy, and happy week, and I will talk with you all soon. All right, see you next time.